And to discuss what these election results all mean, joining me now is Talip Kucukcan, who's a former MP for the AK Party, and Resul Atas, who is the head of TRT Arabi. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. Good to have you on. Talip, let me start off with you. An unexpected result for the AK Party, and I think one that needs a little bit more analysis. When you look at the better-than-expected performance of the ruling parties, especially in the country's east. There, the AK Party won 7 out of 14 provinces, a similar ratio in the country's southeast. What do you tie the ruling party's success there?
I think we should look at these elections on two levels. One, the general level on the national scale. When we look at on the national scale, things did not change much because these are local elections. But if we look at on the provincial levels, on the regional levels, I think things have started to change. In the eastern part of Turkey, in the southeastern part of Turkey, AK Party reclaimed some of its votes, which lost in the past. I think one reason is the discourse of the AK Party and I think investments, economic investments in the region. And also maybe the identity politics, discourse on the identity politics is losing its appeal to many people because the priority of people in those regions have been economic development, employment, I think peace and security in the region. I think this was what was established during the last couple of years there.
Okay.
When we look at the Western Front, when we look at the Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, Adana, I think there's a different story that we need to look at. But on the whole,
let's get to the Western Turkey in just a bit, because I want to get Resul in there, because those are two totally different stories, or it's a tale of two cities or two sides. All right, Resul, do you think it was a matter of the people, region's people, choosing security or setting aside security, choosing economic prospect, and them leaving behind their sociological voting tendencies in these local elections?
That's true. Look, for the last 5 years, there has been some of the flaws, and people were feeling that in their daily life. So I think it's a strong warning to the government, but on the other hand, as Mr. Talip also rightly mentioned, overall, if you look at the nationwide rates of the votes, you will see that the rate that AK Party at the night of the election received is the same as the presidential election. So if it was a presidential election, President Erdogan will be the president, and AK Party will be able to form the government. On the other hand, for the eastern provinces, that is an important game for the country and for AK Party as well. And it is going to enhance hands of the government when it comes to the foreign policy, especially for the northern Syria, because it's been a long time that there has been a narration going on across the global media claiming that, you know, Turkey is about to slaughter the Kurds and is in a definite enmity with the Kurds and so on. But we have what the results or that came out of the ballot boxes is showing us that actually that assessment is a little bit wrong. Yeah. And so when it comes to northern Syria, the government, I think now has a stronger hand.
Okay, I mean, is it fair to say then that the Kurdish vote was actually key in these local elections?
I think so, because when we look at the demographic realities of the southeast and southern part of Turkey, there is a large Kurdish population over there, Turkish citizens of Kurdish origin. And I think that the voting pattern has changed. But it doesn't mean that the HDP, which is claiming to represent the Kurdish party, it is very strong. We would acknowledge that. But I think there is a change. Now people do not really vote on the ideological levels only, or on the party affiliations. People look at their daily lives, the future of their children, their kids, etc. Therefore, I think in the south and in the eastern part of Turkey, these realities that we see on the ground, I think change the pattern of voting.
Okay, what I'm interested in is that, because you're both extremely smart gentlemen, much smarter than I am, so I want to have your intake on this. What does it tell you about the political identity of the pro-Kurdish HDP party when you have that party they don't field any candidates in the West, thereby leading to the understanding that they support the opposition, and then in the east of the country they go full force and then they lose again?
So yeah, there is a real disturbance in among the supporters of the party, and many of them have been very much critical against their own party of supporting the opposition candidates in the West, which the opposition party, by the way, is very much conservative when it comes to the narration related to the pro-Kurdish party. That has been a disturbance, and I think for the long term, it's going to be a loss for them. But overall, what is interesting with this election, I think we should talk about that. Just yesterday, I was going through an article saying that Ankara is closer to Athens than Berlin or Paris, the birthplace of the democracy. I think that should be mentioned because overall what we have seen is that, think of that, a ruling party has been governing the country since 17 years, and two major cities like Ankara and Istanbul for 25 years, more than 25 years. And the people going to the ballot boxes and showing their wills, and this will is manifesting itself through the results. And the power handover is going through the ballot boxes, fair and free elections. And the turnout is remarkable. Any of the Western countries will not have that much of the turnout.
I want to actually just indulge a little bit more into the country's east and southeast. So the fact that the Kurdish voters chose to sort of abandon their natural inclination with the HDP, what does that tell you, or how does the future bode for the other half of the People's Alliance and the MHP, which is naturally a Turkish nationalistic party?
I think what we have seen in the last elections that the political life is very dynamic in Turkey, and we see new alliances and also new realignments, I would say. And also we have seen that there is a cross-cutting, I think, relations between the parties. As in the past, the ideology was a very important factor in the voting pattern of Turkey. But in the recent years and the recent months especially, we see that these people can meet with each other, although they have different ideological backgrounds. And I think what we see here, the ideology and identity politics are not sustainable. When it comes to the HDP, pro-Kurdish party, I would say that now this party receives more than 10% of the vote, so they always go over the threshold. But again, the one big question is that whether ethnic politics is sustainable, because when you look at the CHP, when you look at the other parties, including the ruling party, the emphasis, I think, is more and more on other things: development, democracy, freedom, and regional stability. And also, of course, a lot of emphasis will be put on the foreign policy issues in the future. Therefore, this identity politics and ethnic politics, in my mind, will not be very sustainable. Therefore, HDP needs to look at its own, I think, backgrounds. Especially in the western part of Turkey, they allied with the CHP. I think without their support in Adana, in Mersin, in Istanbul, in many other places maybe, it wouldn't have been possible for the CHP to lead the elections.
Most definitely. We were talking about two tails in Turkey. While the AK Party did get the most amount of votes in the local elections, the reality is that in Turkey's 4 largest cities, as of now, the votes are still being contested, and according to preliminary results, the opposition is ahead of the AK Party. And like you said, Resul, since 1994, the AK Party and its political predecessors have been ruling, and for millions of Turks, the AK Party and Recep Tayyip Erdogan are the only leaders that they know. So, how much of is it a tectonic shift in Turkish politics that we're talking about?
I wouldn't say that much a tectonic shift. I will agree with Mr. Talip. Just it's very much interesting to see that the candidate of the opposition for Ankara was coming actually from MHP, which was an alliance to the AK Party, the ruling party. So he's coming from that kind of a conservative nationalist background, and he has won the election as the candidate of the CHP, which historically you could characterize that as a very much ultra-secular nationalist party. And for Istanbul, Ekrem İmamoğlu himself is coming from a background that was also a little bit nationalistic and conservative. And even through his campaign, election campaign, the narration that he has been through or that he has been using was very much different than the typical narration of the CHP. A narration that the CHP's narration historically is very much ultra-secularist, very much exclusive, and very much, to a certain extent, supremacist as well. But the narration that the candidate of the party has used in Istanbul is much more inclusive, I will say to a certain extent much more conservative, and trying to appeal the people who are coming from different backgrounds, like religious backgrounds as well, those who attach an importance to the national values, historical values, religious values as well. So his narration was very much similar to almost the narration of the AK Parti's candidate. So that is quite important because the vision through the election campaigns based on the ideology that is breaking down, it is a very much optimistic point for the future of Turkey. So from now on, what we can say is that the voters are much more rational, and they're just looking at the practical services rather than being very much motivated or lured by the ideological rigid narrations.
Show me the results.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Gentlemen, always good to talk to you. I always learn a lot when you have you on set. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.